Homeworthy. I'm Vivian, and this is my townhouse in New York. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Vivian Reiss, and I'm an artist. And here we are in my townhome in New York City. I grew up in New York on the Upper West Side, and I went to school, elementary school, between Amsterdam and Columbus on 89th Street. And I'd look across the street and see these old rundown houses and would dream, I wish I could buy one. I wish I could have bought one then, because it would have been a lot less expensive than what one paid in the 2000s. But so it's been my lifelong dream to own a townhouse in New York. I lived in Toronto for many years. I've renovated over 40 houses. And when I decided to come back to New York, my place of my heart, I really wanted a townhouse. So I started to look. There was a carriage house that I loved that was in this neighborhood. And every night I would dream of it, and it kept me going. But as soon as I had the money to do it, it had been sold. So I said, okay, let's get back up on the horse and let's look at houses. And I had walked by this house like the day before I saw it, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. My son had also looked at listings and said, you should look at this house. And then my agent said, well, we are looking at this house. So when I walked in, it was nothing like it is today. It was a very bizarre house, but it's kind of a philosophy, the worse it is, the better I can make it. And so voila, you're in my home of today. We are in the first room of my townhouse, the foyer, and this is where people enter and are welcome to my home. So I hope that this is a very welcoming space. Right here is a chandelier from Murano. It's from about 1840. And before I was born, they made colors like this, and now I fill the whole world with colors like this. So as we walk around the room, I'll introduce you to some of my art. This is a self-portrait I did. I think it was the last portrait I did in my old house of my garden. I was in the avant-garde of urban farming, and I used to have about 150 different edibles in my garden. It was in the front yard and on the boulevard. So you could say I was in the avant-garde of guerrilla gardening as well. This is a project, this is one portrait I did for a project in Japan, where it was for a huge triennial, but I lived in a tiny village of 150 inhabitants, and I did 18 portraits, and they were shown in a show where millions of people came. I lived in the ex-school teacher's house because there were no children anymore, so they closed the school. My studio was in the schoolroom, in the music room, and slowly but surely I got the village to open up and pose for me for these beautiful portraits. The idea with the project was, it was Satayama, which means man's relation or women's relationship to the land. And I said, well, you know, they used to have kiri, which are storehouses for grain, but now really what we need is storehouses for the wonderful people who live in these abandoned towns. So this is one of my subjects. Most of them I did in the studio, but she wanted to do it outside. She was probably about 91 and lived with her husband. She loved irises. And in Japan, the irises bloom all summer, not just in the spring. And you can see here I am in her garden. And this is the way I start every painting, with a drawing on canvas. This is a painting I did for a show I did at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. It was in the restaurant. Jamie Kennedy is a famous Canadian chef, and he was in the beginning of the farm-to-table movement. And so all of the paintings had to do with food. There was performance, a mezzo-soprano, a pianist, and it was all centered around food. And she represents Donovan's saffron. So saffron as an herb, the electrical bananas, the tea, the lemons, all the things that are talked about in the song. saffron. People ask me, where do I get inspiration? And they think like inspiration is a bolt of lightning. I always say, get to work and you'll find inspiration, because there's inspiration everywhere you look. But if you don't start doing it, there's no paintings. There's nothing to share with the world. Creativity kind of wells from inside. It's like breathing. You can't help it. It's a way of living. So is it the most personal? You are a person and it comes from you, but creativity is a force. And so the force is like a conversation between you and the world and you. And if it's a portrait, between you and your subject, the subject and you, and then the third person enters who sees it as a painting. So these chairs were in my house in Toronto, and by the time they arrived here, the upholstery was not in the best condition, and I renovated the house. I got tired, and I'm like, I collect textiles. Why don't I just throw all kinds of textiles on the chairs, and then I don't have to send them out? And so that's what I did. This table I love because in my old house I had a floor that was a mosaic that I made of many pieces of stone that I got from the marble yard. I said, give me all your scraps. And I made this beautiful patchwork. I had one piece left, this piece of onyx, and it broke in transit. And I had these two plexiglass bases that I'd bought at a flea market, you know, because you never know what might come in handy sometime. And so I just took the broken pieces and put it on it, and I love it. It's just such an unusual coffee table. The porcelain that you see up there and the glass came from my great-grandfather's store. He had a glass and porcelain store in Budapest. On the side, those palettes, I never throw away my palettes. I never wash the paint off. They just pile up, and then eventually it gets too heavy, and I get a new palette. So these are two old ones. These lamps I love. They're 70s lamps. You'll see as you go through the house, I must have a thing for pink lights. So these are two pink lights, and I bought them at a flea market, and I had gotten there by 10 o'clock, and I couldn't believe that nobody had bought them. Even I thought, like at 6 o'clock, somebody would wake up and buy these two marvelous 70s plastic, actually, lights. The painting I did is of a farm that raises sheep. They're vegetarians, so they don't eat them. They're just pet sheep. And I went there many times, and the sheep never pose, but they have a curiosity, and they would come up and they'd start licking my canvas and wanted to be petted. So I love doing these animal scenes. So these mirrored cabinets, I bought them from a house where people had collected so much stuff. They love porcelain, and they're actually French from the 1700s. And this I bought at a flea market. I love porcelain that's in the shape of things that are not porcelain, so hence the strawberries. These are beautiful painted Japanese tea set. You'll see more of it up there. And these two little pieces are also from my great-grandfather. So when I bought this house, this room was all paneled wood, not beautiful paneling, like sauna paneling, and it was on a diagonal. When I pulled it off the wall, they'd put it on with a lot of glue, and so I had like these amazing gluey strips, which did not look good. The ceiling was a popcorn ceiling, so I had to put a new ceiling on it. But wherever there was plaster, I preserved the plaster. I used like a plaster mesh that you put on, and then you apply plaster just like in the old days. The crown molding, that's the original molding that was here, and I painted it in all these beautiful colors. I think that really gives the room the excitement, the warmth. It's like entering into the palace of candy. So now we're leaving the foyer and coming into the main space of the house. This is, I guess you call, the second hallway. And I think one of the things that also attracted me to the house is this magnificent staircase. It wasn't original to the house. This house was built in 1850. It was a pretty plain house because it was a spec house. The speculator went broke, somebody else bought it, and in the late 1800s, Herman Melville's brother bought it. Fast forward to 1900, where the neighborhood became much more expensive, and also people were much more interested in classical architecture. And so hence you'll see the lotus and the egg and dart, all these things that are classical. So I bought this in Mumbai, and I loved it. I always wanted one of these fountains. I didn't know where it was going to go because I had it in the backyard in my, not used, just stored in the backyard, in the basement, in a garage. And when I moved to New York, I kind of built this room around it. It was already a beautiful room, but there was a wall here. And you entered kind of to the basement to a warren of rooms. And I just wanted to open it up so that people could see the beautiful round of the whole thing. And so I built the stairs to go round because I also wanted people to enter the kitchen and see the garden, not look at a wall where it had been in the previous house. But of course, you know, there was a butler's pantry, and it was a whole different layout of a house where you lived with a lot of help. Right now, I'm the help, so I could take over the whole space. I also have to clean the whole space, but that's the joy of having a home. This is another self-portrait I did in my garden in Toronto. And actually, the dress I was wearing is a dress I designed to wear to my daughter's wedding. In the old adage, you can never be too young or too thin or too this or too that. You have freedom to do it when you do your self-portrait. I never really thought what goes into my mind. I think I put myself in my portraits in different situations. So my portrait becomes still life, landscape, and all the subjects that I use in my paintings. The first room that I saw when I entered the house was this room, and it was a square room, and something about it, the proportions, I just loved it. But it was covered with brown cedar stripping. The whole house was like a giant sauna. It was very dark, very bizarre. On the first floor, there were huge, big, very ugly pink tiles. As you see, I have nothing against pink because most of my house is pink, but it was not the kind of pink you could fall in love with. And so it was a very dark house, and what I needed to do is give it flow and light. So I have a background as a dancer. My second love after painting is dancing, and you'll see all my paintings are infused with movement and joy and everything that comes from dancing. So when I approach an architectural project, I see what it feels like in my body. I want people to feel comfortable as they walk room to room. And so that's how I create a flow. It's not by doing one color, because you'll see every room in the house is a different color. It's the way the space feels to you. And I had to make the space feel in a way that you could just flow through and feel great. No matter how elegant and fancy the house is, everybody just feels welcome and happy the minute they walk in the door. If I was a wonderful mezzo-soprano, which I'm not, I would stand here and sing my heart out. But in the meantime, come on into my dining room. Now we're entering the dining room, and this is the one room that wasn't ruined by cedar stripping all the way around. This was created in 1900, like I said, that at that time people were much more into classical. And every home needed one of these beautiful paneled dining rooms. You'll see it at the Frick, at the Morgan, at the Cooper Hewitt, this is a mini version of it. But even they must have been stock components, because I've seen some of these components in those houses as well. So the ceiling was original to the 1900. I just had to put my stamp on it. Of course, it was in terrible condition, but I had to paint it probably about 12 different colors. And luckily, I found a painter who could remember each of my colorways, because I can't. I have no color memory at all. So when they were creating all of this beautiful paneling, they also created a sideboard that has the same elements in it. You see the dental, which is also a Greek thing. Here's the egg and dart. So you'll see these components of the rest of the room in this sideboard. So when I bought it, the agent said, well, the first thing you have to do is take the sideboard out. And I'm like, no, this is part of the room. It would have been nice to be able to hang a big painting here, but you know, you have to compromise sometimes on design. And so you get one of my wonderful rooster paintings and chickens in the hen house, and flanked by two portraits and paintings of my garden. I think that having paintings in a dining room just bring it to life and actually give you an appetite for life. One thing I need to tell you is about this dining room table that I made. You kind of look at it and maybe it doesn't make sense, but what I'm going to tell you, this is a roast chicken. So here you see its tail, its body, its poor decapitated neck, and here you'll see there's the drumstick. And if you move over just here, you get to see the wing. These rolling chairs are kind of chicken themed because I wanted this to be like, this material is like a nest. So it's a little bit ovoid, but not exactly. I just woke up this one morning and had the idea that I'd like a roast chicken shaped table. And so my carpenter and I made it. So this is a series that my son did. It's a beautiful, evocative of flowers on a table and a person coming in the early morning light to look at it. I created this spiral staircase to go around the fountain, and I love the idea of round rather than just going straight. As you'll see, my staircase is rounded going up the whole house. And sometimes it's difficult when you're trying to add on something and change to make it so that it seems like it's not awkward. Either like it was always there or this is a new interpretation of it. So I would say this staircase is a new interpretation of the rest of my beautiful Art Nouveau staircase. Here we are in the kitchen, the beating heart of my house. I think kitchens are usually the beating heart of people's houses because it's where people love to gather. And so I have all kinds of parties in here. I have this huge, big island, so I can put out all kinds of food. I love to cook. I've cooked since I was a little child. You'll see here my collection of miniatures kitchens. Well, that was my original miniature kitchen. And I fell in love with cooking when I was about 5 years old. I always used to beg my mother, give me something that I can put in my miniature kitchen. And she gave me little alphabet noodles, and I put them in a pot, and I put water in it. And the next morning, they were like cooked noodles, and I'm like, this is magic. And so that set me off on a lifelong passion for cooking. And I love to nurture. I love to feed people. I love to make people feel good. And so food is a wonderful way of bringing people together. But that's kind of an obvious sentiment, but it's great. This is my love. This is my kitchen. This is I created myself. What's unusual about this kitchen is in contemporary homes, they want kitchens to look like they're not kitchens. Like in Victorian times, everything was disparate. There was no like fitted cabinets. But I wanted kind of a hybrid between a fitted cabinet and really having appliances. So I really wanted a stove that looks like a stove. I didn't want a stove that disappeared into the woodwork, so to speak. My dishwashers, I covered with some of my food paintings. So this is actually my palette. So you see all the paint on it, and then beautiful things from my haskap berries, radishes, all kinds of things, onions that I picked from my garden. The freezer is another photograph that I took. I have kiwi vines here. They haven't given me kiwis. Maybe I got 2 this year. But I used to have abundant kiwis, and I created kiwi ice cream because the blossoms have this wonderful taste. So this I thought was appropriate for the freezer. On this dishwasher is honey in the garden. So we have all these beautiful tomatoes I grew and edible flowers on the grass. And I think the most innovative part is the fridge. So when I first bought the house, it had a very old glass, like refrigerator, commercial refrigerator where you could see in the shelves. I mean, it was very old and decrepit and moldy and whatever. But I thought, okay, I'm not so organized and neat that I could have a glass-fronted fridge and you'd see all the contents. But I'm an artist. I can paint what's inside of my fridge and put it on my fridge. So this is like an enduring view of my fridge with all the kind of great party foods, lobsters, cakes, eggs, chops, cans, maple syrup, fruits, vegetables. Here it is for everyone to admire. So I had a dream for my countertop that I wanted to cover it with my food photographs, because there were about 5 years where in the summer I got up at 5 o'clock every morning, picked something from the garden, thought of a recipe, cooked it, styled it on my multitude of plates, and then photographed it just as the early morning light was coming on. So it was a beautiful, like, animated light. And somehow, through my drive, and I needed to have it done, I figured out how to have this manufactured. So when I bought the house, the kitchen was as bizarre as the rest of the house. It was black and white tiles, but little insets of like other things. These people actually thought they were artists, but it was just terrible. It was like you needed sunglasses when you came here, and not because it was so light. And also the floor was at kind of the level here. So my first job in doing the house is getting rid of the warren of rooms that were here, because there used to be, not in the time I bought it, but originally in 1900 they had constructed a servant's dining room, a wine cellar, a cold cellar for jams and things like that. They had a bicycle room as well. But then in the 70s, when these people renovated again, it was just like little warrens of rooms. So the first thing I did is I dug down 3.5 feet to make this beautiful high ceiling, which just gives the room such warmth and light. And these are the original beams of the house. These are the 1850 beams. And I also had this idea that I would strip the walls. So the first were the black and white op art kind of tiles. Then came the 1900 renovation, which was subway tiles. Who knew that subway tiles is what they used in the 1900s, early 1900s? And then I came to the foundations, which you'll see sparkle, which is Manhattan's schist, which is what we all stand on in this beautiful island. The paintings that I chose for this room are all food themed. So yes, the chickens and the eggs, and this one has some Brussels sprouts and pumpkins. Over there you'll see, when it was rose season and rhubarb season, I created rose rhubarb ice cream. That's my Danvier ice cream maker, which I still have and pull out at most dinner parties, and people have to crank and make ice cream. And there were jam tarts, and this was in my old kitchen. So this was my mother's, and she bought it in Florida in the 1970s. And I always say, well, the kitchen was black and white because that was a style in the 1970s. But my mother had beautiful taste, and I love this Italian break front. So when I bought the house, they had just like, well, you know, the floor was here, and there were 2 sliding doors. And my idea was I just wanted to have an open house. So I had these doors made in Canada. They're teak. And it's very cold. We're in winter here in New York. But it takes me about 3 minutes to open up the entire wall. And so it's an indoor-outdoor space, which is quite unusual for the city. So I dug down in the basement, in the garden as well. It was always a 2-leveled garden. But originally there was a big, huge cement staircase that came almost to the door, and a fire escape from the first dining room out to there. But since it's a single family house now and it's sprinklered, I don't need that anymore to have a fire escape. So it was like just such a mess, this garden. And so I went to Philadelphia, which is like a paradise of salvage, and I bought this fencing. It was not in the form it is now, but somehow I had this feeling that I could make this work. And during the pandemic, when a lot of people were out of work because they were not allowed to work, I had iron welders from the airport come, and they put the ironwork together. So what's interesting is that little piece up there, I needed it because there's a staircase that goes up behind. I needed it to make this stair high enough, and I had just one little piece left, which I put over my fireplace. I had done a few events where I did hearth cooking, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to have a hearth in my home that I could cook on? And as I said, this was kind of the hearth height anyway, so this works out perfectly because you can cook in it and it's just the right height. You don't have to bend down. So you remember upstairs by the fountain, I said there used to be a wall? This was the wainscoting for the wall. And I just turned it right side up and I made a door because I wanted something that pulled the house together, and this was just perfect for doing that. So enter into my garden powder room. So as you see, there's like many themes inside my house. So I had created this lamp for my old gallery in Toronto, which I brought here. I had actually bought the lamp at the Bronx Botanical Garden, and I turned it into a light fixture. I mean, lamp, no, that's a watering can. It's not a lamp. The watering can, this beautiful apple picking ladder I actually found on the street. This sink, I bought at Brimfield. It's from Hungary, and it's actually for kneading dough. And I came up with this idea that it had to float here. So you'll see little garden implements, and also, you know, it's rustic because of the schist wall. And the floor is interesting too, because in one bathroom in the house that I ripped apart, there was a plastic shower, and when I took the plastic shower out, it had solid marble walls. So one of the walls is my garden table that you saw right outside the kitchen door. And the other one I just broke up because actually they were really heavy, and the only way to maneuver them was by breaking it up. But I wanted it to be like a garden path. So this is my garden bathroom. So in this hallway, my miniature kitchen theme continues. This is a miniature cabinet that actually was my daughter's, would play with. And now her daughter plays with it. She loves all of these miniatures. This little kitchen came from Paris. It folds up because I couldn't bring a big kitchen from Paris, so I brought a little miniature kitchen. And this was a painting of my old kitchen, and I call it the artist's birthday. You see the birthday cake, the music, the crabs on the floor, the coffee being made, all of the animals and food and everything is alive. Even the bubbles in the sink are exciting. And I love these three paintings. This is a series by my son Joel Garten. This is beautiful oil pastels on paper. And I just love this collection. Here we have my elevator, a wonderful convenience for my house. I try not to use it except if I'm carrying something heavy because I like to stay in shape. But the story of the elevator, I think this was the hardest structural thing to do in the house because you have to have it made out of I-beams. It's like building a skyscraper within your house because the shaft can't move at all. So I had welders and this big steel came in, and then you have to have it double drywalled, and there can't be one tiny hole. So everything has to be fireproof. So it was really an exciting adventure and something new to learn how to put in a residential elevator. But it'll be here in 1 minute. It's hydraulic, it's not electric, so they have pistons and it runs very smoothly and quietly. It's really a marvel, and I can't believe that I have an elevator, let alone a staircase. Okay, I'm going for a ride. See you later. People often ask me how long I've been an artist, and I say, I think I came out of the womb with a paintbrush in my hand. So I've always been doing creative things. As a child, I danced, I made things, I played musical instruments, I, made dollhouse furniture, clothing for my dolls, like the whole gamut of cooking. I love cooking, the whole gamut of creativity. So every day I wake up and I say, how can I make the world more beautiful today? And that has really been my career path. I've been an artist all my life, and I've created beautiful spaces since my early 20s. Well, we've taken the long ride up to the 4th floor. Welcome to my studio. So this is my studio. This is where I paint, and people ask me, do I paint every day? I paint a lot here. As you'll see, I have volumes of work. I'm constantly thinking of new ideas, my passions, my people I know, people that I don't know that become close friends from posing for me. This is where it happens. I've had an over 40-year career in art with over 50 one-woman shows all around the world. I have collectors in so many countries. I have so many people that I honor that I have met them, that they collect my work. They become friends. It's an explosive experience and also a very intimate experience. I love doing portraits because being an artist is a little bit lonely, and it's wonderful to get people into the studio, and it's a wonderful conversation. It's non-threatening. I love doing portraits. We really get to know each other because it really is a dialogue between the sitter and myself and the sitter. So I always ask my subjects to bring something of importance for them. So it becomes kind of a touchstone for the painting, and it enters into the vocabulary of the painting, the composition of the painting. So for example, this is one that I just finished. This is of Omri, who's one of my dance teachers, and he actually brought 3 objects. He brought a spool of red thread. He brought a big stuffed lion because he's a Leo, and a sculpture that he had made in high school. And he wore a sweater that his mother made. So it's really a very beautiful, intimate portrait of a wonderful human being, a very deep thinker, and a very beautiful mover. This is Gordie Johnson. As an object, he brought his double custom-made bass. And he lives in Austin now. And I guess it's prescient that he was wearing red cowboy boots in this particular painting. This is my family, part of my family. This is my daughter, my grandson, and my granddaughter. They were here just during the holidays, so this is a very recent work. And yeah, the kids don't stay too still, but it's like, you don't need to stay stock still in my paintings. I welcome people to move around, because actually, as you move around, you become more yourself. You become in the position that you usually take. The face is the last thing I paint, because all of you is also in your movement, about how you hold yourself. A lot of paintings, as I say, the face is the last thing, and people come to my studio and say, oh, hi, that's so-and-so, because they can tell right away that it's them, even without the face. So maybe the eyes are not the portal to the soul. Your whole being is your portal to your soul. This is part of my still life series. Before I went to Japan, I really had to do that huge job of 18 portraits in 2.5 months. So I did a quick series of still lifes. And so these are my different toys, my Kewpie dolls. I guess this one is mainly Kewpie dolls. But it's all about the composition. Like in still lifes, you really get to think about composition in a different way, because the things are not moving. And as you use the same objects over and over again, it's not like you have to depict the object. You already know how to depict the object, how to draw it. And so it gives you a different kind of freedom to create new compositions. This is also a portrait of my family. My cousin Valerie von Sobel came to visit, And she didn't give me a lot of time, but she's an amazing dresser, and she was wearing, this is not made up, everything, the butterflies, it was kind of a piece of face jewelry that she was wearing. And this is my daughter, and this is my granddaughter. And this little dog was not here, but my cousin always has dachshunds, so I had to include that in the painting. This is a painting of my garden in Toronto. It's a diptych. It's 2 panels. And I loved to have enormous things in my garden. So this is a giant taro that I had, and I planted them year after year. It was unusual to have something so tropical in a garden in Canada. And as you see, my aesthetic of my garden, there's Swiss chard, there's tomatoes, there's nasturtiums, there are eggplants. Everything is growing in a kind of harmony. There's no hierarchy of what's more beautiful than other things in a garden. Everything that grows is beautiful. If you look at the way I would create my garden every year, I'd start with a blank canvas. I didn't have a lot, except for my roses, I did not have perennials. So the soil was like a blank canvas. And then you kind of place things on the soil that you think will look good. And as it grows, you kind of groom it in a way that you want its composition. And of course, the energy, and also that you can't plan everything. Like gardens have serendipity to it. Paintings have serendipity to it. And what the artist's role is to make sense of the serendipity. Artists kind of recreate the world, reshape the world. It's like science. We're trying to understand how the world is put together. And that's what composition is, and color, and movement, and plasticity, and all the things that happen on a very flat surface. So I've been doing a lot of portraits, and I've done a few self-portraits. And so I thought, I found a box in the basement with all my old still life objects. And I said, it's time to start doing a still life. And so I've done, kind of moved into a bigger still life format that I used. And I put up my old bears. I bought these all at a flea market in Budapest. I think they're German wind-up toys. Usually I have my subject sitting here, my human subject, but today I have some inanimate subjects here. And I lined up that, and I did it differently than I used to do still lifes. Usually I'd put them on a table. But now I feel like I know the objects well enough that they can go on different planes. So there's this plane, and then things sitting on the floor, and of course, things at different perspectives that don't exist in real life. But that's the story of early 20th century art, and also Japanese art, where you play with the perspectives. People are always fascinated by my palette and my paints, and they can't really understand this organization. But at art school, you're taught to clean your palette every day and scrape off all the paint and start again. And I always thought, what a waste of paint, because oil paint stays viable for quite a long time. Sometimes you have to poke underneath it. But also, the paint is laid out in a logical pattern. And to me, to start every day to do this logic is like, it interferes with actually getting to work. You have to think about something else. And I keep on getting more and more colors. Somehow, when I look at them, I know from the outside what the colors are. It's just an instinct that I know what's what. I mean, I do have them a little bit organized in some other places, but mainly it's in this jumble of wonderfulness and color. Is it necessary for people to go to art school to do art? No, I don't think so at all. As a matter of fact, I followed a career path where I went to the kind of the high school where they wanted you to go to Yale or Vassar or any of those. And I felt like I really didn't want to learn how to do art in an academic setting. So I actually did go to art school. I went to the Boston Museum School, which was the top-rated art school in the country at that time. But I stayed there a year, and then I actually just then apprenticed with 2 artists in their studio. And that's really how I learned how to paint, but not just how to paint, like how to set up shows, how to live the life of an artist. So is it necessary? No, my son never went to art school, and he does these amazing paintings. He collects a lot of self-taught Southern art. I also have quite a bit of the Souls Run Deep artists. So do you need to go to art school? No. I mean, art was created from like cave art. You go into the caves in France, and the art is so beautiful it can make you cry. Maybe, I don't think that they were done by just anybody. I think those were the artists of the time. How did they learn? They apprenticed each other. They knew how to make the pigments, how to apply them. Those kind of technical things are things that you learn in art school, but technique is really not that important. Everybody finds a technique that works for them. What's really, truly important is expression. And no school can teach you how to really express yourself as an artist. When I originally bought this house, this was a really dark space. It was a warren of tiny little rooms with, again, all that cedar stripping. I think the diamond stripping was about here. And I knew I had to do something to, this was not going to be a studio because I love light. I only paint during the day. I can't paint by artificial light. So I started by just taking down wall after wall after wall, and taking down the ceiling too, so that I have these exposed beams and a higher ceiling. And as you see, my dining room is so ornate and old-fashioned, and I'm so lucky I get to create all these different kinds of spaces because I have that formal dining room, and here I have a New York loft. White, exposed brick. It's paradise. So welcome to the studio bathroom. So I wanted this room to be kind of more fun. My first inspiration for this room is I walked into a bath store, and I saw these knobs. And I just love these red knobs. And I thought, wow, okay, I need that for my bathroom. And for that, I had taken down the ceiling. The skylight was original to the house. And so red and white ceiling, bathtub. I need a red bathtub. And I love scallops. So I had these custom made in California, these scallop tiles. And then, wow, I needed a scalloped chandelier, which is mother of pearl. I think they're made in the Philippines. And I love this mirror. It's so different than the rest, but it's also quite the same because like these knobs make flowers, and they're the flowers up here. And actually there was a niche here, not as symmetrical because it's part of the fireplace of the house next door. So I made these shelves for my toy boats. As you see, I love toys. This actually was the original ladder to the roof. It was in a different corner. It was at the top of the stairs. It was like you had to squeeze yourself through a hole like this to get to the roof. So I made it my towel bar. This is an antique from Saskatchewan. This is what I keep my toiletries in. Rooster painting, of course. And one of my old palettes. Practically every room needs one of those. Right off the studio is my guest room. And actually, the room I hid out in when I was renovating the house. So this room had much thinner cedar stripping. It was like a cedar closet in here. And I decided, actually in this room, it would be fun just to paint it all white. So I have like my little summer cottage up here. So I painted it white. I put in the crown molding, which of course makes every room better. And it had a pine floor, and I'm like, I need a blue floor. I absolutely need a blue floor. And so it is. This armoire I had made in Toronto, and it's artist themed because you see their paintbrushes here. And those monkeys used to sit on top of the cabinet. They were part of the cabinet, but the ceiling is too low, so I put them on the wall. These are monkey paintings when I did my project in Japan. On my spare time, I'd go see the monkeys that swim in the hot springs. And I did many paintings of them. And as wild as they were, sometimes they would actually pose for me. I love monkeys, as you see, there's monkey theme. And also, my son, when he comes to New York, he uses my studio, and he creates tons of beautiful art. They're just like flow from his soul. He's such an amazing artist, and his main métier is he's a composer on the piano. He does improvs, very passionate, very interesting. Like, you're always at the edge of your seat. What is happening next? And I think it's reflected in his paintings as well. So these strawberries were kind of a window display in a department store that went defunct. And I knew I had to have them. I waited till midnight till it came up in the auction when I finally bought them. And these wonderful heart-shaped things, I've had them for so long. I don't know what they are, but they look like the same technique as toilet covers. But of course, you don't have heart-shaped toilet seats. But I bought them at the flea market in Thailand, in Bangkok, and I've loved them ever since. They followed me everywhere. This is where I dream my dreams, and every day I wake up in a garden. So we talked about my garden series in my studio. This was a passion of mine, my garden. Every year I would plant it, and not only would I plant it and enjoy it, and the public would enjoy it, but it would smell delicious. It would taste delicious. I would cook from it. And it was my subject. So this is one series that I did in my garden. When I finished this room, I went up to my painting storage. I had the measurements. And lo and behold, this series, which is not contiguous, fit exactly in this room. Perfect. I love waking up in my garden every day. Besides being my garden room and waking up seeing this amazing green ceiling and this beautiful Venetian 1950 chandelier and these crazy balls that I decided I needed a ton of and make a molding out of, I call this the room of slightly strange chairs. So here we have this beautiful Burmese throne chair, which I have a lot of things from Burma, but actually I bought this from Philadelphia. This chair I've had from the 70s, so it's original. I have to recover it because I had to take the cover off. This chair, this flower chair, is probably perfect for someone who loves botany because you can just sit in it and contemplate the rest of the garden. The house originally had 8 fireplaces, but I know from my past house, which also had 8 fireplaces, you never use 8 fireplaces. Also in New York, it's extremely expensive to bring the fireplaces up to code and line them. And you're not allowed to have a fireplace in the bedroom. So why not make it a library? So I have all my wonderful art books. And this is not book burning. This is book non-burning, appreciating art, books, life, stories, biography, frames, pictures, everything that goes into a rich life. So I'm trying to remember what this room was originally when I first saw the house. I think it might have been like a gym with a bar, not a drinking bar, a ballet bar, which actually I wouldn't mind having now, but that's not what I wanted in my bedroom. So this bedroom was really a blank slate. It had 1970 floor, so I took it back down to the original parquet from 1900. And then I had you'll see in one of my rooms I have a mirror, and in colonial times they had a molding that they used in mirrors that had little balls hanging off of it. So I ordered boxes and boxes of balls on Amazon, little wooden balls. And I thought, what am I going to do with them? This was actually the last room I completed in the house. And so I came up with this idea of having the balls suspended from the ceiling, which also goes with the chandelier. And I just I love it. No one else has molding like this. So the house originally had, not great doors, just normal doors. And in my adventures in the salvage yards of Philadelphia, I found these 2 sets of doors that came from a mansion probably in the 1890s. And I brought them home. Of course, I had to put my painting touch on it. I love a little bit of a gold molding. It's fantastic. And what's great about it is I made the ceiling higher here so that you have like a grand entrance. And I had a matching set for the other side that's the entrance to the bathroom. So why don't we take a peek in my bathroom? Before we get there, though, I have to tell you about this molding. So the previous owners left me this huge Art Nouveau credenza in the front hallway. It was too big for the hallway. I tried to sell it, but nobody was interested in this huge, big piece of Art Nouveau furniture. So I thought, what's the best elements of it? And it was all these wonderful carved pieces. Like you see, this is very Art Nouveau. And so I took the carved pieces off of the piece of furniture, and I had enough for these 2 doorways, and I reconfigured it in a new way and made moldings. This is my wow bathroom. So I love Islamic art. So the bathroom was inspired by Islamic architecture and objects. So the one thing that I knew I wanted it bright in here, and I had this idea of opalescent tiles. And I looked all over, and finally a friend who lives in Mexico came here and she said, I have the perfect tiles for you. I use them in my house. So these are actually Mexican pool tiles with this beautiful iridescence. But you start one simple thing, and if you're me, it gets more and more complicated. So of course I couldn't just have white plain tiles. I had to have mosaics. So I picked out some gold tiles, and then I kept on ordering little squares of mirror. And then I'm like, oh, but that mother of pearl tile is so pretty. And so I kept on ordering mother of pearl tile. And then I had like these little elements that I could use. So I had these Victorian glass tiebacks, and they came into the picture. Those, you'll see more of them in the shower. The only thing that's original from this house that was from the old renovation were these 2 mirrors that I kept. And then I'm like, okay, so how can I bring it into the room? And you'll see my shower here. I created this arch for the shower. This room was also not in this shape at all. It was also cedar stripping with a very funny ceiling that went like this. And there was a little staircase somewhere in the corner. So I started like, not with a grand plan, but like as each element came by, I would make up the tile work for it. I started on these walls, and I guess to mirror this, I've had this disco ball since the 70s. I found it in a house I was renovating. This is a column from an old house. And so like I knew I wanted to create mosaic columns on the side of the mirrors. On the side of the windows, I just wanted to design. And like one of my favorite things is paisley. So I knew I needed a paisley-shaped bathtub. And my amazing carpenter at night looked at boat building videos, and he figured out how to make this shape. It's actually built like a boat, and then it's fiberglass, and then waterproofed, and then the tiles went in it. So paisley is a beautiful element. This chandelier I had custom made in Morocco. These mirrored pieces, also a kind of mosaic craft. This is mercury glass. I don't think it's real mercury. So this came from Udaipur. I had shipped from India. These are Turkish bath shoes. These are in the Turkish bath after you're really hot and steamy, they serve you sorbet. So these are antique sorbet spoons from Istanbul. These are old wallpaper printers. This is they roll them, and that's how they make the tape. I also have ancient beauty supplies. This is a mascara, so they'd put makeup for your eyes in it. These are old, this is Roman. These are old perfume things. These are for togas. They're the pins that hold them closed. I have 3 of them. This is, I bought in India. This is beautiful. This is quartz shaped into a bowl. And totally off topic, I have this chair. I have always wanted this chair from the 70s. It's a French designer, and it was called his friend's chair because he had his friend model for the shape of it. And I just love it. So this door I bought in Jaipur in India. It comes from an old house. It was actually too short for the doorway that I wanted, so I added some wood to the bottom to make it to the right proportion of this room. And of course, I had to discreetly also put it on the bottom of the door. These actually, this one, I bought in a little hardware store in Marrakesh. It was like a little hardware outlet. It was like the size of my shower. And it's actually the pole that goes this way. But I thought, oh, it's great. I could use it as a handle for this door. And welcome into this room. This is where the toilet and the sink are. This mirror is also from Udaipur. The lamps are Moroccan. This is from like an 1850 Turkish hamam. And my idea that I wanted a floating counter. So this was an engineering feat to build these counters. And just to make the sink the right height, I had to lower this. And then when it was all done, I needed to paint it. And the inspiration came from courtyards in madrasas, in Islamic schools, that they have these huge, big stripes. They're not usually in this colorway, but I must say navy and pink are one of my favorite color combinations. So I had this dream come true too, that I had a navy and pink room for my sink. So this was the last part of the bathroom. So this was the grand finale, the shower. So the idea in my head was it was like walking in a garden. So here we have a fountain. Here, this is a reflecting pool. And you'll see like little jets of water there. Then there's a giant urn. And then you have this explosion of flowers. And what's interesting about this is the material that I use. So these gold tiles, I had done a bathroom around 40 years ago that had little gold fishes. They're actually gold. And I saved about 40 of them. I had them in a little plastic bag all these years. And when I did this house, I have 1 tile left. This comes from a bathroom on the 2nd floor that doesn't look like this at all because they're all together, but I took the glass apart to make petals. These are various kind of samples I bought, so I just pulled them off the board and made the bugs and the flowers out of them. The tiebacks, these glass Victorian tiebacks, I bought from the estate of the man who started the American wing at the Metropolitan Museum. And actually they have the other 5 of these in their stack. And I bought some less important ones also. Just these are probably 20s. And also the green circles on the top. In the dining room, there were 2 stained glass windows that were like falling down and made the dining room even darker than it is. So I saved all the little green circles and I used them in my shower. So this is like a shower of memory. I love having space. I came from a very large house. And I grew up in an apartment in New York, and my dream was to have a staircase. And now I have 5 stories of a staircase, so that dream has come true. And I love having people over for dinner, for salons, for concerts. I love sharing my house and meeting new people. There's a myriad of things I love about my home, but not to sound egocentric, but what I love most about my house is it's mine, that I created it. This is my entire vision, my dreams, my passion, and all the work I've put into it. Welcome to my living room, or if you'd like to call it, the Grand Salon. It's where I have salons and concerts and speeches and all kinds of fun things. So this painting I did for the show I mentioned that was all about food. And I saw this beautiful opera singer at a concert, and I thought, I have to get to know this person. And so I went up to her and I said, would you pose for a portrait? And she said, well, after I give birth, I'll come and pose for you. And this is called the Nursing Diva. She's nursing her baby. And we've been lifelong friends. And what she says about posing for me, she says, it's kind of a combination of having tea with a dear friend and going to a therapist. And this is one of my iconic works. This is also a friend of mine, Eva Goyen, who's this incredible pianist and now composer as well. This is a piano which no house can be without. This was an archway into my old house. These are Art Deco chairs that I covered with dead stock sari material. I used to have two of these chairs. They were actually twin beds, and I shortened them to just the right for a chaise, but in this room, I thought two of them were too much. It houses a little bit of my collection of textiles. This is a kimono. These are from Uzbekistan. But what's really interesting is this was another portrait that I did in the series in Japan. This man worked in a kimono factory, and I went to visit him there, and he did all of the stenciling on the beautiful bridal kimonos. So this is actually his work that he gave to me, all these beautiful textiles. So what kind of questions do I ask people who come from portraits? You know, it's much more organic than asking a question. It's not like an interview, like I'm not a journalist, but I am, like my project in Japan, I did feel like I was an anthropologist, a sociologist, I mean, all these, a psychiatrist. All of these interests come into when you interact with a person. And so, do I start off with a question? No, the conversation just flows. It's not a journalistic expedition, even though in Japan it was slightly different, because I did have things that I would ask people, and I had a translator. And one day the translator, I was sitting there and I was like, I really was working hard. It was like a crazy schedule to get all these done. And I asked the translator, just ask the questions. You know what questions I'm going to ask. And she said, no, I could not do that. Because she felt funny asking people questions, where as an artist, you can ask people anything. So this quote unquote bed, because this is guest bed, party where people sit to listen to concerts, where people played board games. My kids used to, you know, do all kinds of fantasy games. I've had tea parties on it. But it originally comes from Bali, from Indonesia. I bought it there and had it shipped home. And I had a mattress made for it. And I had it reinforced. There's steel underneath it, so many people can sit in here and it won't fall apart. The lights in it, those are Egyptians. That's from Tunisia, and it has some textiles from around the world. I made this pillow out of a beautiful old obi. I stuffed it. These were actually part of my dancing costume when I danced in Bali. This is from Pakistan. This one is the oldest one. It actually came from my grandparents' apartment in Budapest. So that's very special. I wonder, doesn't everybody have a big paintbrush in their living room? I mean, it stands next to this beautiful biblical painting by my son. I had a gallery, and I had two of these brushes made for the gallery. They were outside. And as an artist, proportion is everything. So you'll see in my house, I go from the tiny to the giant, because the size of things and the way they fit together is just so fascinating. So why not have a giant paintbrush? So we're now entering the library guest room. When I bought this house, Okay, they hadn't put cedar stripping on these walls, this 1900 paneling, which is quite different in style from the one in the dining room, but I have seen this in different houses of that period. Even this mantelpiece, I've seen it in several different museums. So they were stock items. But it had this crazy lowered ceiling, also in some kind of bizarre shape. And I knocked through like tons of cedar, like piled up in the floor, to reveal the original ceiling. I don't know why they ever thought that they needed to lower these beautiful 12 and a half foot ceilings. But they did, and I knew that this was a dark room, and so I used, as I said, I love pink and navy. I love navy and gold. So this was really quite a job. My painter couldn't do this. I had to have my carpenter actually laser all of these lines so that they were even. But this is so many, these were from my old house. This is covered in French provincial tapestry. These were custom made. The poof was custom made. People always ask me about these paintbrushes. These are Chinese, and they were used outside of temples where they were dripped in water, and then there was calligraphy done on the sidewalk, and it was ephemeral because they would just evaporate. These two copper balls, they were on the top of a building, and as they were tearing it down, I'm like, wait, I need those balls. So I bought them from the wrecking company and then had them polished. These are Tibetan horns. They fold up for easy transport. I mean, these are much taller, but these are the smaller ones that I bought in Tibet. These are paintings of irises I had in my garden. I had a neighbor who was a nun who had moved into the neighborhood in 1915, and she gave me some of the irises from her garden because her father was a bulb importer, and I guess iris corms as well. And so every year they would bloom, and they smelled like grapes. They were just so fantastic. So annually I did a few paintings of them. They faded very quickly, so I had to get there right at the moment every year that they started to blossom. And the interesting things, this is the room, this is my temple to Bohemia, I call it. So amazingly, I bought these in Morocco. What's interesting about them is that they're made from aloe fiber. And these are different dead stock saris, Moroccan carpets. My mother loved leopard, so those were her pillows. This is a beautiful, also from Uzbekistan. Anything that's purple is very special, and these are gold threads. I have another, this one is from Turkey. This is a beautiful jacket with gold thread, and of course my favorite, has some of my favorite paisley. These are interesting. My father had a textile mill in New Jersey, and I went back there, and they had a museum across the street from his now it's a loft, but from his factory. So the director of the museum gave me all of these that came from his factory that was across the street. And they also had the original sign. I had wanted to go back there with a ladder and a screwdriver, but when I got there, the museum had it. So it's lovely. They have his sign, they have some of his machinery, and they have a lot of his threads. And this is really interesting because this is a jacquard card. This was the original computer. On, off, on, off. On the top of my shelves, I have, these are various things from Japan with the textile theme, a weaver. That's a tile from a roof. On the other side, there's some pieces of temples from Burma. Those are also from Burma. On top there, from the 1700s, there are overdoors from Venice. This lamp actually was in my parents' living room since the 1950s. I love the sculpture on it. This is a painting of a videographer, and Garane Tarosian, and she brought as her object this bag of hers and these Armenian crosses. And so since she was a filmmaker, there's all of this film going on and all of these eyes watching you. Also, the room just had small little windows, so I made these doors because I wanted to bring in more light, and the railings are from Philadelphia Salvage. There's a theme going on here, but they're the same age as the house. And the transoms were there, they were just covered up. So I was able to keep with the beautiful high proportions of the room. I had to kind of work on this a little bit because there were radiators here, so I had to change the dynamic of it. These are things I've collected all over Asia. I have some antiquities here. I love archaeology. These are hair ornaments from Indonesia. This is actually a napkin from my grandmother's trousseau, and there are her initials, Arankazuker, AZ. This is a part of a Greek plate. I don't know, this is just a museum of wonderful, beautiful things that are made by people in this wonderful, beautiful world. Home means to me a place where I can be free to create and enjoy life. Bye, Homeworthy. Thank you for coming. It's been so much fun. But I gotta get back into the studio. Time for painting. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.